Thank you so much for coming, and apologies for a little bit delay. I think the hot weather delays everything. So again, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Institute for Australian and Chinese Arts and Culture at Western Sydney University. My name is Jing Han. I'm the director of this institute. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Darug people and acknowledge their ancestors who have been the traditional owners of the land for thousands of years. We also want to pay our respect to First Nations elders, past, present, and emerging, and particularly in the midst of the campaign for the Voice to Parliament referendum. Western Sydney University supports the change to the Constitution to enshrine the Indigenous voice to Parliament, believing that the Voice to Parliament will enable Indigenous Australians to provide their opinions on matters that impact them, their families and communities, and will play a significant role in healing the nation and in supporting our journey towards true reconciliation. Today, we are very honored to have an outstanding personality who have been a champion for the cultivation and the promotion of Australian Chinese artists actually before. Welcome to the opening of IAC new art exhibition, Traditions and Transformations, featuring two distinctive and outstanding artists, Dr. Fan Dongwang and Susan Chen. As you have seen in the introduction in the catalogue, the two artists are of different generations with very different growing up experiences and different migration stories, but are united by their pursuit of traditions and transformations in their own unique and very different ways. The exhibition that brings these two artists together is itself. It's a statement on traditions and transformations and on how Chinese art and culture traditions keep being reinvented and expanded. Today, we are very honored to have an outstanding personality who has been a champion for the cultivation and promotion of Chinese Australian artists, as well as Indigenous artists, who have been in a long-standing leadership position, including Director of Art Atrium, the President of Chinese Australian Forum, the Chair of the New South Wales Art Gallery Vis Asia Committee, member of the Advisory Board of Multicultural New South Wales, and also who was the recipient of the inaugural New South Wales Premier's Multicultural Award for the Arts and Culture in 2013, and has been recently been honoured with a Member of Order of Australia in recognition of his significant contributions to Australia's diversity and multicultural society, particularly in the area of art and culture. Please welcome Simon Chen, AM, to give the opening speech.
Thank you, Professor Jing Han. Thank you, every one of you, to come to this exhibition. I think it's a fantastic exhibition that Jing Han had curated and organized. The title of the exhibition, Transformation, Tradition and Transformation, I think it's quite appropriate. I think a lot of Chinese Australians here do feel like they're living in two worlds. I mean, Australia is one of the best multicultural countries in the world, but by the same token, a lot of Chinese Australians do feel that sort of uneasiness about their identity sometimes. And in a way, this exhibition is very appropriate in that we have two artists here, as Jing Han had mentioned, from two generations. Dr. Fan Dongwang has been here for quite a while, since the 90s, but trained originally in Shanghai. He was already quite a well-known artist and established artist before he came to Australia. But when he came here, he decided to further educate himself. So he he got his master's degree at COVA, Master in Art, and then also subsequent to that, he went to Wollongong University and got a PhD. So basically, he was trained originally more in traditional Chinese painting, but at the same time, he was a carver. So he was doing a lot of three-dimensional sculptural work. So he basically started doing, well, I always say that it's his signature brand, his own brand of work. Like, it's different, nobody else does it the same, but obviously it's inspired by a lot of different people. It's contemporary, but obviously it's inspired by pop art. You know, it's very colorful, but one thing that's unique to him is it's very three-dimensional. Because of his background as a carver, you look at his painting, it's really three-dimensional, even though it's a two-dimensional work. And he has evolved over the years. When he first started his early series, one of his early signature work is the dragon, which is a very iconic Chinese symbol. And, but then he basically painted the dragon quite differently from everyone else. Again, it's three-dimensional, it's extremely colorful, and so it was a very popular. And then he decided to do something different. He decided, okay, I'm in Australia. I was talking to Doug. He had this discussion with him about what he should paint to symbolize Australia. So he decided that to paint the gum tree. But again, it's quite different. He painted the gum tree unlike anyone else. His perspective is from the bottom of the tree looking up at the sky. So the branches of the trees is like, you know, like you do in calligraphy. It's just spread out, you know, everywhere. And again, it's very colorful, it's three-dimensional. So this exhibition, in a sense, is virtually like a mini survey show of his body of work from the beginning to now. During the pandemic, he produced some works which are based on the pandemic bodies. And then more recently, his exhibition, again, he evolved and then started doing landscape, which are inspired by Chinese landscapes. But at the same time, he has his own signature style of a three-dimensional work, and they're very colorful as well. So I think we'd like to thank the IAC from Western Sydney University to put this exhibition together, because it's a chance for everyone to see and appreciate his whole spectrum of work over the years. With Susan Chan, she grew up here, but obviously she has a Chinese heritage, and her work is interesting also in that she basically is inspired by a lot of traditional Chinese sort of things like the mahjong game, but then she decided to reimagine it. I think the work is based on, during the COVID period, there was a fair bit of racism that went on, and so she reproduced this mahjong set with images and text which reflect those sort of slogans and racist remarks and so on. And I think the title, I'm Not a Racist, but reminds me of one of Vernon Aki's work. It's a text work, but it's got the same title, but again from the Aboriginal perspective, and this is from her more Chinese perspective. She's a ceramicist, but at the same time she also produced this series of ceramic work which is very much contemporary in a way that she started using digital print onto the ceramic work. So they're quite unique again. So I'm always interested in cross-cultural expression in art, and this exhibition really shows the best of what one can achieve on that basis. And I think at the end of the day, all artists should be encouraged, because I think at the moment, a lot of times, unfortunately, both government and everything else tend to look at art, like even university. The former government decided that, you know, you basically, if you can't get a job, then you shouldn't be doing it. So they increased the fees for the art education so high that you have to be really rich to be able to afford to do it, on the basis that you cannot get a job afterwards, because if you do that. But really, at the end of the day, I remember when I started uni, a lot of times people just do the course because they want to get an education. A lot of people do arts and so on. They don't necessarily follow any particular vocation or career. It's a way that, from that they learn how to do research, how to write, and so on, and they will evolve into other jobs. And even architecture, which I'm an architect. And I remember when we first started in City Uni, there's 75 students. By the time we finished, it's only about 30 something. And half of them end up doing something else. So I really think that education is very important, and art is very important. It is part of our culture, part of our civilization. So I think, again, I'd like to thank Western Sydney University to support the arts and support Chinese Australian artists as well. So enjoy the exhibition, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Simon, for this great speech, and quite inspiring and supportive of the art and the artists. Just so reminds me, I encourage you to read. We have had interviews of Susan and Dr. Dongwang Fan, and we printed out the transcript of the interviews, asking them interesting questions about their attitude towards traditions and transformations, and how they do the transformations. Quite interesting, Dr. Fan said when he, being an established artist, came all the way from China with the sole purpose of abandoning Chinese identity and Chinese culture to become a Western artist, and that only ended up in actually, no, you have to go back to your roots and to actually transform traditions, which he did, and that's his body of work. Susan, on the other hand, grew up and was born and grew up here in Australia, being an Asian heritage person. Actually, when you were little, you want to be same as others. You want to conform. So for that reason, Susan still didn't want to know anything about the, heritage, culture heritage. And again, ended up doing, mahjong. It's really amazing with a contemporary theme. So that is actually what fascinates me looking at these two artists' works. So I do encourage you to read the interviews, so their answers is actually quite interesting. And today we're going to have a fun bit to have a dialogue with the two artists. So please welcome Susan and Dr. Fan. So yeah, as I said, it's really from interesting, engaging, and insightful answers of what we expect. And some questions are for both, some questions are for either of them. So the first question is for both of them. Do you have to be an artist?
There are some days when I think the answer should be no, because I don't know, I think a lot of people think that when you're an artist, being creative is something that you always are, it's just always state of being. It's actually very hard work. It's something that you have to continuously work at. I think a lot of people, they think that you're constantly full of ideas and everything just kind of is always, coming out of you, but sometimes I really do struggle, and I really, sometimes I say to my family, God, I wish that I wasn't creative. I wish I didn't have that urge to do this, because life would just be a bit easier. I'd just go, I don't know, be an accountant or something, and so I think, it's very overwhelming sometimes, like to constantly be on and try, people expect certain things from you. They think that you're the person to go to if you need advice about anything, and so there's a lot of pressure as well, I think. But but at the end of the day, I think, yes, I do need to be an artist. I can't imagine doing anything else. It's just something that, I can't really stop. Like, even as much as working with ceramics absolutely devastates me sometimes, like to the point of tears when things don't work out. I think when it does work out, the feeling is just indescribable. So I think, the good definitely outweighs the bad. And so, I think, and also the thought of going, to a job interview at this stage of my life absolutely fills me with dread. So I don't think I could go back to that kind of that life, working in an office. So yes, definitely I have to be an artist.
Thank you. Such good answer. Yeah, Dr. Fan.
For me, when I was a little boy, I always liked to draw, but my family has three person influenced me to be an artist. My father was a doctor working in a university as a professor, but when he was young, say following the literary tradition, they learned calligraphy, poetry, and seal cutting. So he taught me first to appreciate calligraphy. My uncle, who is an artist and novelist, but also is an editor in a Shanghai fine publishing company. So he was my first teacher to really taught me the traditional Chinese painting as well as the Western style drawings. The third person is my auntie. She was a carver, a jade carver, working in a factory, but she was also trained in the same school I went to later. So that three person influenced me to be an artist, and now I'm becoming an artist.
Thank you so much. No matter how many artists you have met, each of them is different, and they all have very individualistic answers or reasons to be an artist. So it's always very interesting to know their answers. Dr. Fan, this is a question for you. You grew up in China, as we mentioned. You came to Australia in 1990 as an adult and established artist. What was your first impression of Australia when you arrived? And what was the strangest thing you have encountered?
I would say two questions in one answer. The blue sky of the Australia. So because when I was in China and as an artist, I always see the gray sky. So in my painting, everything is gray. Artist is influenced by their environment. But when I come to Australia, the sky is so blue. I'm trying to find the color to match it. So if you see my gum tree, I'm trying to make it look brilliant blue. That's why I often look up into the sky. So that influenced my painting greatly, and I would say that's the most important thing. And also strange thing for me to see in Australia. So all my color now became very, very colorful. These are all, even the big dragons or the bodies, other works are very, very colorful. So I thought I must use the strongest color to paint Australia. It's the thing I'm most impressed by.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very surprising. The blue sky was the strangest thing. When I first arrived in 1988, earliest in 1988, the strangest thing that I've had is actually McDonald's, because I didn't know what it was. So I asked the orientation teacher, "What is that?" And he looked at me, he said, "McDonald's." I said, what is McDonald's? And he looked at me, didn't answer, thinking that I was playing a trick. And then it took me a long time to realize, oh, it's McDonald's, of course. So, Susan, this is the question for you. You were born and grew up in Australia as a second generation of Chinese heritage. What was your first experience of culture clash? And what was the strangest thing that happened to you growing up in Australia?
Quite funny, actually. But it's probably the classic story of the whole, school playground, lunch boxes. Food I thought was really, really weird what non-Asian kids ate. I'm sure they thought the same thing about us. But yeah, my mum, she used to send us to school with, like pork floss sandwiches, white bread, and just really, really strange things like that. And people would go, "Why are you eating a hairy sandwich?" But also, things like something really kind of, odd was cutlery. we didn't have cutlery. We had, we always used chopsticks at home. And so I remember going to school camp when we were about year 4, I think. We had this wonderful teacher, and she was so very cultured, and she was actually the one that kind of introduced me to the arts. But anyway, we were going on this school camp, and she was talking about how we were going to have these, 3-course meals. We thought, what on earth is a 3-course meal? But she didn't want to be seen with a whole bunch of, uncouth kids, and so she actually brought in a whole dinner set and laid it out for everyone, and she kind of explained to us what all these different, forks and knives, and how you kind of had to work your way in, and all the different entrees and mains and desserts was this and that. And so it was a massive, kind of revelation to me. I had absolutely no idea that this is what white people did. It was quite funny. And so, when years later, when I was watching Pretty Woman, when they had that scene with Julia Roberts' character is, getting the same etiquette lesson, I just absolutely thought that was hilarious. I think for me, the whole, just being able to kind of realise that actually isn't the worst thing in the world, like when you're actually different, has been a real kind of eye-opener to me as I've kind of grown up. And I kind of think back and think that these are actually kind of fun experiences, and I think like my mum, she's probably the creator of fusion food, I think. We're kind of mixing Asian and Western food together in our lunch boxes, and always giving us something to kind of, be surprised at school. A funny story for me as well.
Thank you so much. It is quite interesting, and people talking about traditions. I actually never seen line dance before I came to Australia. So my experience of a Chinese culture of line dance is actually happened in Australia. And the other bit is sweet sour pork. We never had that in China, actually, so that was quite interesting. My next question, it's also interesting one, is we all see the world differently, and depending on our focus. For example, being a experienced, long-standing subtitler, I've worked for SBS subtitling department as a chief subtitler for 23 years. So I always see things that other people do not see, line breaks. I can't stand off or preposition or article the hanging at the end of a sentence. It has to be together at the beginning of the rest. So the logical parts needs to be together. So whenever I see that, I spot it, and I said, I really want to physically take the to the next line. So I really want to ask you, artist, being an artist, what do you tend to see that other people do not see? Dr. Fan.
I think a visual artist especially is study how to observe things, how to look at the landscape, look at the people, and they're trying to find a new way of looking at things. So each artist has this task to do this. So they often provide perspective or the points of view or how to look at things differently. Each artist, then they tell the viewers through their work, then the viewer will understand, really we can look at art in this way. So for me, in my work, because as a background I have a carving experience, so one day I thought, why I'm not using that experience? Because carving, low relief carving, is to transcribe a painting onto a surface of object, then carve it out. So this time I want to turn it around. I want to turn that carving back into painting. So in that painting, I always trying to put the shadow underneath the lines, so as if I'm carving a picture. So if you look at the picture, if you don't wear this, you can take a photo of my painting, and then in your phone, you can turn it into a black and white. So all of the painting, if you take that step, you can see it immediately. That's a carving hidden behind the painting, especially the landscape. So that way, I just telling the viewer, when you're looking at the landscape, it's not just the common way of looking at it, but also you can look at it as if it's a carving. That way, you can see the different style. So the artist, by providing you this new perspective, is actually providing a new way of looking. That's the same as every other artist, different artist. Once you work out his, like Cezanne, once you work out his exhibition, because you spend so much time looking at his work, then you look at your environment, you can see Cezanne, what he thinks exactly. And you will realize, oh, before I haven't thought of that, but now the artist taught me to look at that. But if you go to another artist, you can see it is this way. So maybe in the future you will come up with your own way of looking at things.
Thank you, Susan.
I think the thing that I notice is kind of like untold stories, or the potential for visual storytelling. I notice really random things that most people probably wouldn't think, is important. So really kind of inconsequential, seemingly trivial things as well. So, a lot of the time, I think I was quite a lonely child when I was growing up, probably because of my sandwiches, but I didn't have many friends, and one of the very few Asian children in my school, and so I spent many a lunchtime on my own, in my head. And so I think from a young age, and I continue to do it today, which, my husband thinks it's quite funny, but I can see stories like wherever I go, and if I can't see an obvious one, I create stories as well. I kind of used to, give all the kids, my own little background stories to try and understand, why they were the way they were, and also, why, that was just a way of understanding, I guess, trying to understand everyone around me. And so I continue to do that today as well. I observe people, and I love looking at, human behavioural patterns. And it's just something that's always intrigued me, like things that you kind of walk past, and there's like for example, I'm absolutely fascinated by construction sites. I can't walk past one without just having a good old stare and just watching the work, especially if it's something that I pass regularly, because I love to watch the growth and the progression of something, something developing. And like you are, Simon, I'm not an architect, but I would have loved to have been one, so I'm absolutely fascinated by architecture. And just the things, like just the really kind of practical things, so stuff like the scaffolding. I love scaffolding. I absolutely love the patterns that that scaffolding creates, and things like that I think people might not necessarily think is beautiful. Even like patterns on a garbage can, I noticed the other day, and I thought that's a beautiful pattern, things like that. So I'm always spotting patterns in both the digital, online space, as well as in the physical environment around me. So yeah, I think that's what it is. It's just this continuation, this love for being able to come up with a story and to kind of fill in gaps. Like when I see little remnants of something that might have taken place. Like a little sandcastle on the beach or something, I try and recreate a story of what could have happened there, and just try to fill in the blanks to create like a new narrative as well. Okay?
Thank you so much, and I think that explains why we see the world differently, and when we share our views, we see more of the world that other people see that we don't see. It just reminds me, Susan's story, being alone on the play yard, is like, reminds me of the story of Hannah Gatsby. And she had autism, so when she was in the schoolyard, no one played with her, so she was quite awkward, didn't know what to do at the lunch and recess, so she always ventured to library, either have a doze off or to read the book, but she can't read the whole book, so she learned to read index. So get index, and then quite quickly to know actually what this book is all about. So she read so many indexes that she became so knowledgeable. People would often ask her about the books, that she knows so much about books. Then I thought, that's true. I always look at the index when I read a book, so to get to know, the keywords. So quite interesting. I see that's how the art works, the creativity just opened up the world more to everyone, and that's how we can actually appreciate the art and really enjoy. My next question is, which we're always interested for artists, when you create artwork, starting from conceiving an idea and then to the process and to the end product. Do you have any rituals when you start a work, and which phase is actually give you the most joy and which phase give you the most stress?
When I create a work, when I was students, the most difficult phase is to have an idea, a valid idea to work on. But now, after so many years of working as an artist, I have so many ideas. I just don't have enough time to work it out. So what I'm doing now is working as quick as possible. So I'm not worried about this work will succeed or not. I just work it out. But before, you can see my work in different stages. Some gantry, some earlier works, they are very carefully planned, painstakingly work out each details. But now, in my new series, Landscape, I just working as quick as possible. Often I find liberated by this experience because I don't get so much stuck here. I just don't have the time to work on it. So often I'm working on 2 or 3 work together at the same time. So one is I'm waiting for it to dry, I work on another one. That way I don't waste time. So I don't drink, and I find sometimes listening to music might be a distraction. So basically, if I'm really stuck, I just leave it for next day. So after one night's sleep, I'll come up with a new idea to fix it. That's my answer.
Thank you, thank you. Susan, yeah. Oh, so like when you start a new work, starting from conceiving an idea to the process and to the end of the end product, which phase give you the most joy and which phase give you the most stress or pain?
Okay, so when I first start a new work, it's always quite vague, as I'll come up with a very loose idea, and sometimes it kind of stays vague, but sometimes if I think it's going to be something that's potentially a really strong concept, I will often, I'm quite methodical in my approach to my art practice, so I will do a lot of research. I love researching whatever it is I'm working on. I love to research everything I can about that topic, and so then I kind of move into a process of sketching, I guess, trying to get the whole idea out of my head. I often get like images, ideas when I'm trying to sleep, which is really annoying because I don't want to get up and draw them. And so I tell myself, the way I do with my dreams, if I think I have a really great dream I want to tell everyone about, let's say I give myself visual cues to try and remember things. And so I might say, when you look at that breakfast bowl, you will think about this. And so, sometimes it gets triggered and sometimes I remember these things, but a lot of the times they just kind of get lost in that space. So trying to draw them and, physically get them out of my head and onto paper is a really, really kind of big, important step for me. And then I think the making part for me is definitely the part I enjoy the most. I love the medium that I work with, which is ceramics, and there's a certain joy that you get out of being able to physically manipulate material, from scratch to create something and see it all the way through, to the firing stage, which I have to say is my least favourite stage because it creates so much angst, so much stress and anxiety because you could be working on these pieces for weeks and then letting them dry over, even several more weeks. And so it could be months before you even get to firing some of these larger pieces. And so to have it kind of all come to this, come to a head and at this one point everything can just go wrong is incredibly anxiety inducing. As I told you when she came over to the studio, And yeah, so sometimes it just kind of breaks your heart because you go through that process of making and spending all that time and effort, you know, getting it just right, just to have that little crack open and ruin everything. So that's, yeah, definitely my least favourite part is the firing. But of course, when it does work out, it's also amazing. So it's a bit of a kind of love-hate feeling. Yeah.
My next question that everyone must be interested in knowing is the advance of technology. Are you worried or excited or couldn't care less about the rapid advance of technology? Do you feel like the technology will fundamentally change art, particularly your art? If yes, how? If not, why not?
As an artist, I'm not worried too much about AI machine trained learning, because recently I had an encounter in a conference, UMAC conference, which is as a Hong Kong scholar coming to do a report telling us they research for AI machine who can produce a new kind of, who can create a new kind of calligraphy, which is very difficult even for accomplished calligraphy to do that. So they spend lots of money, time, lots of mathematical and scientific methods, but in the end, he just show us slides, 10, 20 steps. In the end, the result is very disappointing. I thought it's even worse a person who just like primary school students who did calligraphy. But they were all very excited. They thought this is advanced. But then I had an argument with one of the attendees from Shanghai, from China university. He said, "Oh, do you know there's a machine in the street can do calligraphy?" I said, "Really? Does it good?" They said, "Of course, you are so outdated. You don't know the technology." So I look on the internet, I find a machine which is very rigid, just doing very simple things. It's a great machine if there's nothing like that before. It's invented now, which can do it. That's great. But for the machine as a kind now is learning aesthetics, human feelings, creativity, I think it's a long way off. I even doubt it can do it. I think lots of it's a marketing hype. They want you to believe this, and they want to get government funding for it. But some area, some job, simple job, of course AI machine will replace human. That's no doubt. But as a calligraphy, I'm not worried about this happening in maybe 10 years. I don't think it's possible.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your view. Susan, what do you think?
Look, I don't know if you guys have had a look at my work. I already kind of use a bit of technology with ceramics. So I'm kind of already working in that space, and I can honestly say that there are plenty of ceramicists out there who will never, ever, ever go near a 3D clay printer, and they will be absolutely fine. And they will continue to be fine for, forever, because for those who are interested in it, that will be something that will interest those people, but it doesn't mean that it's going to have a negative impact on the rest of the, for the rest of the art world. And I think that with technology, the way that, the way we're seeing AI kind of becoming a bit more, part of our everyday lives, especially with things like, ChatGPT, where you can kind of prompt it to tell you what to write, like write, essays and whatnot for you with prompts and things like Midjourney that allow you to, again, put in prompts to create these virtual digital images. Again, all they're doing is drawing from a pool of things that already exist. And so they can do that for all they like, and it's always going to just end up being the same thing over and over again. and they will only ever be average, you know, really mediocre kind of results, because that's what the algorithm creates it to do. So I think that it's a bit of a phase as well. I think people are just having a bit of fun and playing around with the technology. Everyone's going to get sick of it. They're going to get tired. They're going to get sick of, you know, seeing your, I don't know, your Pope in cool puffer vests and, you know, your Barack Obama and Joe Biden wearing their pink suits to see the Barbie movie. You know, everyone's just having a bit of fun, and we'll get over it soon. And then I think, as Dr. Fan was saying, you can't replace creativity. You can't replace a person's ideas and their concepts and the thinking that goes in behind, you know, making something. And so I'm absolutely not threatened by technology at all, and I don't think anybody should be.
Thank you so much, Ami. I'm sure technology is in every field, because I teach translation, so people always ask me, would you think of translation will be replaced by machine translation? Well, I used to say no, but now I say depends. It depends on what? Depends how we actually speak as a language speaker. Because if one day we speak like a machine, and then machine translation can replace what we say in translation. And then people ask, do you think it's possible that one day we speak like a machine? Yes, it is possible. And it's a very simple example. You make a call, and then the machine says, press 1 or 2, and then you say, oh yeah, say for example, I made an appointment, and then I said, oh, Thursday doesn't suit me. Can you change me to Friday? And the machine said, I don't understand you. Please say yes or no. You know, like in the end, you have to follow. Otherwise, you just can't get anywhere. And then there is a possibility one day we will be like forced to speak like a machine, and then machine translation will take over, because the machine translation takes over, as Susan mentioned, based on the current data. So the data will tell them. So never say no, but I think Gray, you know, embrace it rather than reject it. But it's interesting to watch this space. My next question, before the last question, is, what do you see in each other's art that you found inspiring?
Thanks for Susan to be part of this show, and thanks Jing Han for curating this exhibition. This institution has done great work, promotes cultural dialogue between different cultures. So I see Susan's work, because Susan is a younger generation, that's a very important generation, and her willingness to looking at tradition and apply that into her work, that is very encouraging for me as well, because sometimes we do need a younger generation to take on, otherwise the tradition will be lost.
Thank you so much. Susan.
I just want to say, as well to Dr. Fan, I think your paintings, and particularly your sculptural paintings, are very, very beautiful, quite a clever and unique interpretation of really traditional and themes from your own connection to your cultural heritage. You obviously still have a very strong connection to that part of your identity, and I think it's just so wonderful to see how you've kind of been able to bring those themes and those motifs into your paintings through a really kind of contemporary, but also kind of like a very unique cross-cultural aesthetic that you've almost kind of created. And I feel like it's something that you maybe could only have created, or could have only resulted in, as a result of you kind of being immersed within, kind of living between the two very distinctive cultures. And so you've kind of got a lot of these, Eastern and Western elements that, like themes and styles and techniques that are all kind of woven through your paintings, and they just kind of create these beautiful, harmonious, compositions, and just work beautifully together as a lovely collection of paintings. So.
Thank you for both of your answers. So that actually answered my question of your views on traditions and transformations. You both have answered that question in your own way. So obviously traditions and transformations are both very important in your work. So my last quick question, if you could have one wish, what would that be?
And for me to have one wish is I wish I have more time to do more work. That's my one wish.
Thank you.
I would have the exact same wish. That's exactly what I was going to say. I feel like there's just 24 hours is not enough time for a day. I think I need at least double that. I cannot get anything done in one day. So absolutely time.
Well, thank you. That's the time we always want and we always lack of. Thank you so much for both of you for this great dialogue and then responses to my questions. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Dr. Fan. Thank you. She wants to take a photo. Take a photo.
And
So our whole project is based around this whole
How much art that's fancy.
Put it here.